Have you ever just sat there and dreamed about leaving the whole 9 to 5 grind like decades early? Having total control over your time, your life? Well, that is the incredible promise of the FIRE movement. It stands for financial independence, retire early. But as we're about to see, the path to that freedom, it's not always as simple as it looks on paper. So the core idea is pretty simple, right? You earn more, you spend way, way less, and you invest that difference like your life depends on it. Because, it kind of does. The whole goal is to build up this nest egg that's so big you can just live off the investment returns forever. Here's the thing. For a lot of people, especially when you're just starting out in your career, that dream of FIRE can suddenly feel like a total mathematical nightmare. The numbers can look so huge, so impossible, that you start to wonder if the whole thing is just a fantasy. And that right there brings us to our story. It all started with this one post on Reddit. A 22-year-old decided to run the numbers on his own FIRE journey, and well, he came to a pretty depressing conclusion. And it sparked this massive online conversation about what it really takes to retire early. Okay, so let's dive in and break down the math that led to this crisis of faith. He laid out his goals, his income, his big target number, and when he put it all together, the picture was, let's just say, not pretty. First up, his goal. He wanted a retirement income of 70,000 Canadian dollars a year. Now, this wasn't for some life of luxury with yachts and private jets. This was just what he figured he'd need to live a decent, comfortable life in Canada. Okay, so to get that 70 grand a year, he used the famous 4% rule. This is a rule of thumb that says you can safely withdraw 4% of your portfolio every year in retirement. So you do the math, 70,000 divided by 0.04, and you get a target nest egg of $1.75 million. Wow, that is a huge number. And this is exactly where the dream just slams into a brick wall. To get to that $1.75 million by the time he's 50, based on his current entry-level salary, he figured out he would need to save a truly staggering 75% of his take-home pay. Let's put that into perspective for a second. His net income, after taxes, was $43,000. Saving 75% of that means putting away $32,500 every single year. That leaves him with just $10,500 for an entire year of life. That's less than $900 a month for rent, for food, for getting around, for everything. He realized pretty quick that owning a home in that scenario wasn't just going to be hard. No, it was completely impossible. And this realization led him right to his core dilemma. Is this really freedom? It felt more like an impossible trade-off. He'd have to live like in his words, homeless hermit for 30 years just to get a modest and maybe even fragile retirement. The whole promise of FIRE just seemed to completely fall apart. But you know what? His story didn't end there in despair. The online FIRE community jumped in, not to tear him down, but to help him out. They pointed out several really critical flaws in his thinking and, honestly, showed him a much, much smarter way to look at the whole equation. So what was the single biggest mistake he made? It's something called the static income fallacy. He based his entire 28-year plan on his starting salary. But think about it. Nobody's career just stands still. Your income at 22, that's just the starting line. It is not the entire race. The comments on his post were just flooded with real-life examples. One person was making 4 times their starting salary by age 32. Another was making 5 times more by 34. And that's the crucial point. Your ability to grow your income is your single most powerful wealth-building tool, especially when you're in your 20s and 30s. This piece of advice right here just sums it all up perfectly. The early years of your career, they're not about this extreme, miserable penny pinching to hit some impossible savings rate. No, they're about building skills, moving up in your career, and growing that paycheck. The really heavy-duty saving, that comes later, when you're actually earning a lot more. Of course, earning more is only half the battle, right? Because if your spending just grows right along with your paycheck, you're never actually going to get ahead. And this brings us to the second key piece of this puzzle, taming that monster we call lifestyle inflation. This is what people often call lifestyle creep. You know how it goes. You get a raise, so you get a bigger apartment. You get a nice bonus, so you buy a fancier car. And before you know it, you're living paycheck to paycheck on a 6-figure salary. The real magic of FIRE happens when you intentionally capture that gap, when you take that new income and point it straight at your investments, not at new expenses. So how do you actually do it?
Well, the community shared some amazing practical tips. Unfollow influencers so you stop playing the comparison game. Automate your investments. That way the money's gone before you even have a chance to spend it. Oh, and my personal favorite is this one. Calculate a big purchase not in dollars, but in how many hours of your life you had to work to afford it. I'm telling you, that will change your perspective real fast.
And this really is a crucial mindset shift. Frugality isn't about being miserable or depriving yourself of everything. It's about being intentional. It's about figuring out what truly brings you joy and value, spending a ton on that, and then just cutting back mercilessly on everything else that doesn't really matter to you.
So beyond that whole flawed income assumption, there are a couple of other major mathematical errors in his original calculation that made his goals seem totally unreachable.
Okay, this one was the biggest. He was including his savings as a future living expense. Think about that. When he calculated his $70,000 retirement budget, he was basing it on his whole current income, and a huge chunk of that was going to savings. But when you're retired, you don't need to save for retirement anymore. It's the one expense that completely vanishes. You're living off your nest egg. You're not adding to it.
He also used a really conservative investment return of 4 to 5% after inflation. And look, it's good to be cautious, but the historical average for a diversified stock portfolio is actually closer to 7% after inflation. Thanks to the awesome power of compounding, that tiny little 2 or 3% difference each year becomes absolutely massive over 3 decades. It can dramatically shorten your timeline to retirement. And here is the best part of this whole story. After reading all of this incredible feedback, the original poster actually edited his post with these exact realizations. It was like this public aha moment. He got it. He understood his income would grow and that his retirement budget was way overinflated. And just like that, the impossible equations started to look solvable again. So this whole discussion gives us a much smarter path forward. Step 1, focus on your career because your income is your absolute greatest wealth-building tool. Step 2, control that lifestyle creep by intentionally saving the raises you get. Step 3, rerun the numbers using more realistic returns, like that 7% average. And finally, remember that FIRE isn't all or nothing. You can find your version of it, like Coast FIRE, where you save like crazy early on and then just let your investments coast to the finish line while you take an easier, less stressful job. You know, at the end of the day, the real power of this whole FIRE mindset isn't just about escaping work. It's about building a foundation of financial strength that gives you freedom, that gives you options. Whether you decide to retire at 45, or switch to a career with more meaning, or just keep working, but with a whole lot less stress. Which really leaves us with a final thought to chew on. Maybe the real goal isn't just to optimize some spreadsheet so you can stop working. Maybe it's about using these principles to design a life that's so fulfilling, so aligned with who you are, that early retirement becomes this wonderful option, not a desperate escape. So what's your first step on that journey?